Good morning. Today is July 11th, 2013. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I will be interviewing Mr. Michael Vance. Mr. Vance is with the American Legion, Post 901.
Actually, it's Post 554 in Carmel. This is from a school I went to at the national headquarters.
Okay. And we are at the Prairie Capital Convention Center in Springfield, Illinois. The court reporter who will be taking the transcription is Kent
Evans.
Mr. Vance, if you could please state for the record your last rank.
My last rank in the Army was a Staff Sergeant or E6.
Okay. Could you tell us, share your history or your story about your service time?
I initially enlisted in the Army on the delayed entry program in November 1976 while I was still in high school. I went on active duty in July of 1977, intending to serve whatever time I needed to serve initially and then get out. But I wound up staying for 20 years.
So you were a career.
Yes.
Where did you take basic training at?
I was scheduled to take basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. But between the time I had initially enlisted and I came on active duty, they formed something called One Station Unit Training for military police at Fort McClellan, Alabama. So I went through the reception station at Fort Leonard Wood, and then was put on a bus from Fort Leonard Wood or Waynesville, Missouri to Anniston, Alabama, to go through basic training and advanced training at Fort McClellan.
So you said one duty station?
One station unit training. It was basic training and the advanced training all at one base.
Was that something new at that time?
At that time, it was very new. We were the sixth unit to go through that particular type of training.
Interesting. So did you like doing that?
Yes.
So after your basic and your AIT, where did you go?
I went to Camp Darby, Italy. It was near Pisa, and I'm basically on the Italian Mediterranean, or the Riviera. It was called the Italian Riviera. It's right off the Mediterranean.
Was anyone from your unit going with you?
Not from basic training. I just was assigned to a specific area, being Italy. When I arrived in country, spent the first few days in Vicenza, northern Italy, and then was sent down to Camp Darby, which was more than centrally located in Italy.
So as a military police, what was your training? What kind of training did you?
Well, as it currently is, there's a lot of law and order operations, as well as enemy prisoner of war, what they call battlefield circulation control, friendly prisoner of war. One of the running jokes in the military police corps is we're multi-purpose, or many people.
So that's what MP stands for, many people. So is the post that you were stationed at in Italy, was that a pretty large base?
It was geographically, the main post was relatively small, only about 2 miles or so, but it had a large ammunition storage area, which was the largest in southern Europe, and as well as a supply depot about 4 or 5 miles from the main post, which provided all the logistical supplies for the Southern European theater. And we provided security for the ammunition supply point, as well as the supply depot, plus did the law and order incident and for the installation as well as the gate security. That in those days they still had the MP stand on the gates and in the pretty uniform, see whatever the seasonal uniforms were, whether it be the dress greens or we wore a lot of times during the summertime we wore the summer TW or khaki uniforms.
Okay, so you just said something about your uniforms, pretty uniforms. In those days, they were different than the fatigues that the regular army or
Right.
the infantry army wore. Is that correct?
Well, we wore basically the same uniform as the rest of them as the rest of the army, but there was a higher standard of dress with part of the military police. And a lot of times there was a lot of ceremonial dress. There was special occasions would wear the ascots or even wear the white shoelaces on occasions, and white gloves, the white hats. So in that respect, it was, the uniform stood out from the rest of the army.
So how long were you stationed in Italy?
I spent 2.5 years in Italy, and during the time that I was there, they started looking for the carrot to dangle over my head to get me to re-enlist, and we had Air Force dog handlers come in from Aviano Air Base on occasions to do health and welfare inspections, and they found out that I was interested in the dogs, so that was the magic carrot that as the enticement to extend my military career. So I wound up leaving Italy and going to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas to learn how to handle dogs, and from there I went to Fort Myer, Virginia.
So you're training to be a dog handler.
Right.
Can you talk about that? Or do you want to talk about that?
Yes, it was. The military dogs were a lot of fun. When I went through the training, they took basically an untrained dog as well as an untrained handler and put them together. And it was a 10-week long course. So as we were learning the basics of working and handling the dogs, we were teaching the dogs at the same time, from basic obedience all the way up to the attack and the aggression work and scouting, patrolling work.
So what was your first dog? What kind of dog was it?
It was about a 2-year-old German Shepherd. The one that I had that I took through training at Lackland Air Force Base was identified as having the potential for a explosives detection. And after I got him trained and certified as a patrol dog initially, they took him and I did for additional training as explosives detection. And I ran into him about 8 years later in Germany. His handler came to our installation, and there was that same dog, Max, and he still recognized me to some degree.
So how long did you actually keep a dog?
The longest I ever kept a single dog was almost 5 years. I had a dog named Cleaver that when they closed the kennels at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, we took him in at Fort Myer, Virginia, and I started working him in about May of 1981, and he stayed with me until I left Germany in November 1986. He even went with me when I left Virginia and went to Germany. They had what they called a patrol team concept, so they kept one dog and one handler together for as long as they could.
Did they do that with all your dogs, or just at that point?
At that point, they were just doing it. A lot of times it would depend upon what type of assignment. For instance, when I left Germany, I was scheduled to go to a kennel master or supervisor slot, so I had to leave my dog behind.
So, okay, when you went to Lackland and became a dog handler, then you went on to Fort
Fort Myer,
Myer.
Virginia.
Virginia, and you took more extensive training.
Well, it was kind of like like when every time we went to a different installation, it took some time to learn the ropes for that particular installation. But the initial dog I worked was an older dog named Baron, was about 11, 12 years old, and I worked him until his hips gave out. And then I got the younger dog. That was Cleaver.
And then after that, where did you went to Germany?
Yes.
Okay, and where in Germany were you?
It was at Misau Army Depot. It was the closest major city was Kaiserslautern, and it was about an hour and a half or so southwest of Frankfurt, and within 30 miles or so of the French border. The, the area is well known even today because the big Army Medical Center is a Landstuhl Army Medical Center where troops are transported from the theater in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there's a major Air Force base nearby, Ramstein Air Force Base, where they fly the troops in and out of.
So how long were you stationed there?
I was in Germany for 3 years plus 1 month because I got caught up in a involuntary extension for 1 month, so it was 3 years, basically.
So how long were you in Germany?
3 years.
3 years. And did you, at the time that you were in Germany, were you stationed there during the Cold War?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any combat or?
No combat per se. One of the incidents that occurred during the time I was there was the East Germans killed one of our American advisors in East Germany. He was assigned to the American military liaison that monitored the Soviets and the East Germans, and he was apparently got too close to one of the installations. He was shot and killed by one of the East Germans.
As a military police during that Cold War time, and did you see security change?
Oh yes, like I said, we had the military liaison that went on the other side. They conversely had their liaison that was in the West Germany, and the Soviet military liaison mission. We used to have what they called smell 'em reports every time spotted one of those vehicles near an American installation. Of course, the day that Major Nicholson was killed, they spotted one of those Soviet military vehicles close to one of the American installations. So we got a call that was kind of a call to arms, as it were, and we went out. And of course, by the time we got out there, that vehicle was long gone. But that was what the kind of the closest came to the enemy at that time. But during that time, there was the Red Army faction and the different groups that were split off the Baader Meinhof gang, and kind of the forerunners of the different terrorist groups that exist today. There was one incident where an American soldier was enticed into a situation by one of the female terrorists, I guess at a bar or in a club, where they got his ID card and they used it to bomb one of the air bases a few days later.
Did you, during your time in Germany, Um, did you travel at all?
I did some traveling. I went on a what was called a three-country tour that went into Austria and Switzerland and Liechtenstein, then back into Germany through the Black Forest, and also traveled throughout the country some, going to different trainings. Went to the 7th Army Training Command, our center down in Vilseck near the Czechoslovakian border.
How was your travel after the security was enhanced? Did your travel change at that point?
Uh, it would There would be some minor restrictions usually after a security incident, but for the most part, they tried to maintain life pretty much as normal. But there's a lot of times there were certain restrictions that are advisories that would restrict travel to some extent.
Did you live on base?
I lived on the installation unit.
So after Germany, then where did you go?
I returned to the United States and went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is the was at that time the home of the military police school. And I was assigned as the kennel master at the Installation MP Company.
And what did you do?
I was in charge of 4 dogs and the handlers, and was responsible for ordering the food and supplies for the kennels, and that's where I learned about a lot of the supervisor tasks that I didn't know existed to that point, like 5-year budget plans and stuff like that.
So it stepped up your task.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
Well, that's kind of a funny story. At one point during the time I was there, I volunteered, or I had re-enlisted to go to Germany at the same time I was drafted to go to drill sergeant school. And so I waived my option to go to Germany and went to drill sergeant school. But after a day and a half, I said, "This isn't for me. Send me back to my unit." And for some reason or another, they thought the assignments branch got in their mind that I had gone to Germany. So for probably the next 3.5, 4 years, I was trying all these sneaky, underhanded tricks to get out of Alabama, and they thought I was in Germany. So I wound up spending almost 7 years at Fort McClellan.
Really? So that you were under the radar.
Yes.
Wow. So then, after those years, trying to get out of there, what did you do?
What happened was I had when they finally discovered where I was, basically, I had put in a request. I wanted to go back to Italy, and I received a postcard from the Army that said all the slots in my pay grade in Italy were filled. So I figured, well, maybe I'm stuck here for a while. And shortly after that, I got an assignment notification to go to Korea.
And where in Korea did you?
I wound up in the 142nd MP Company, which was in the heart of Seoul, the Yongsan Army Garrison. It was the north bank of the Han River. We were the furthest north unit in our brigade, and just to the rear of the 2nd Division. So we were the most forward deployed MP unit beside the division.
And while you were there, were you handling dogs?
By that time I was back to working, or I was a squad leader and back to working with troops. But we had a variety of missions while I was in Korea, including enemy prisoner of war and the route security and route reconnaissance. We would occasionally go to the field up around the DMC north of the Imjin River, which was probably as close to getting to the actual enemy as we could get.
Okay, so there was enemy territory at this time.
Yes. It's still the most heavily armed and guarded border in the world at this time.
So this is somewhat of information that many people may not understand, that Korea still has guarded borders and there is enemy.
The two Koreas are still technically at war. The Korean conflict from 1950 to 1953, they just signed a ceasefire. There's an armistice commission that's still in existence, and they still meet the two sides for peace talks whenever, or probably once in a blue moon. But technically the two Koreas are at war, and then the demilitarized zone, or the DMZ in Korea, is very real. I just read an article where it's the longest continuous minefield in existence.
Did you live on the compound?
I lived on a compound for a short period of time when I was in Korea, and then our first sergeant wanted to get non-commissioned officers out of the barracks, so he gave us two options: move out of the barracks, or he would help us move out of the barracks. So my roommate and I got an apartment close to the compound, and moved off the base.
So how many military people actually lived off base?
At that time, there was a troop buildup. We had quite a bit of people moving in off the base. Our unit, probably about 35 to 40% of the unit were lived off the installation.
Did you feel threatened to live off the compound?
Other than having to be wary of conditions in a large city such as Seoul, there was no real threats. But the armed threat, being the North Koreans, was still relatively close by. We were only about 35 miles from the North Korean border, even in the city of Seoul.
Did you shop in the community?
On a limited basis. There was a small little, like a convenience store that you would go to for comfort items like snack foods, but most of the shopping was on the compound.
Did they have PXs?
PX and commissary.
Did you purchase a lot of commodities, like cameras or anything like that? Was it less expensive?
There was in the heart of Seoul, there was what was called the Itaewon shopping district, where they had all the produce and the almost anything you could want at the reduced rate prices. The biggest purchases I made were for the mink blankets I purchased for my ex-wife and my daughter at that time.
Wow, but that was pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, so after Seoul, Korea, how long were you there?
I spent 1 year in Korea.
1 year. Okay. After that, where did you go?
I was assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia.
And how long were you there?
I was there from November of 1994 until I retired in July of 1997. So about a little over 2.5 years.
And what did you do in Fort Benning?
I was a desk sergeant. I worked a patrol supervisor. I worked in the physical security section for a while. During the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, they also had a Olympic Village compound set up on Fort Benning for the women's softball, which was held in Columbus. So we had a mini Olympic Village in the middle of in the middle of the post down at Fort Benning. So in a respect, we played part of the security for the 1996 Olympics.
Interesting. Now, with the military police, you had mentioned to me that you were with several different divisions or units.
Right.
So is that normal that you get transferred to different units?
The normal rotation is about 2.5 to 3 years. If we move to a different installation or a different post or another unit.
Do you attend any reunions with any of those units?
I have contact with a number of them through social media on Facebook, which is a great little tool for doing many reunions. And there's been one unit that I was stationed with in Virginia, the 561st MP Company. We've been planning a physical reunion, but nobody's ever been able to get the time off or decide upon an actual date. But we do have our group on Facebook. That's kind of a miniature reunion right there.
Where, out of all the places that you served, where do you think you enjoyed the most?
Probably at Fort McClellan, since it was the home base for the military police at that time. And it seemed like I met just about somebody from just about every place I'd ever been stationed coming through there, through service schools or rotations. And I enjoyed the climate in the southern part of the United States.
When you traveled to the different countries, the different cities, was there something that you purchased that it was just the most intriguing thing that you purchased, or that you brought back? Maybe you didn't even purchase it.
Not that there's nothing that really stands out. I know another thing I forgot to mention was when I was in Germany in 1985, when 1984, 1985, President Reagan visited Germany, and he came to Ramstein Air Base, and our unit was tasked with our dogs to help pull external security on the air base for the presidential security. That was pretty neat.
Did you get to shake hands with him, or did he talk to you?
We didn't actually get to see him. We just saw the planes as they came in. There was multiple planes, kind of a decoy, so the bad guys would have to guess which one they were going to shoot at.
Really?
We were doing our security sweeps on the outside of the air base, and right as the planes were getting ready to land, there was a loud bang at a warehouse back in an area back directly behind me, and of course we all looked at one another like, what the heck was that? and just like I said, it was just about the time the airplanes were coming in, so we went running back to make sure there wasn't anything that we'd missed. But it turned out to be just kind of an ill-timed accident where a board got knocked down on a warehouse or something like that.
Did you have any memorable times, anything that just stuck out in your mind, other than the Reagan time?
Um, they kind of run together over the years, but that in time in Germany with the Reagan security and the Olympics was probably the most memorable.
Do you remember the day that your retirement came?
Yes. I had started thinking about it probably about 5 years before. I was at the ice cream shop on Fort McClellan with my daughter, and I saw a couple of retirees, and they kind of made an offhand comment, "Enjoy it now," because your time is coming, and kind of when the retirement date came, it started feeling kind of like um, the uh, the rest of the army was kind of saying, "Okay, but what have you done for us lately?" But there was it kind of almost kind of a bittersweet moment, realizing it coming towards the end, but it also kind of wanting to see what was next.
Did you, after you retired, did you go back to work in the civilian life?
I spent 3 years after I retired down in Southwest Georgia as a police officer. After I retired, stayed fairly close to military installations that way. Then I had a bit of a reversal of fortune that required coming back to Illinois, and since then I've been mostly involved with the American Legion. Started out slow, just at post level, helping with bingo, and then started gradually working my way up, and through command positions and or officer positions in my post. And a 3 years ago, I went to a district meeting, and at that time, the district senior vice commander Dale Kilmer came up and said, "We're looking for a junior vice commander for this year." And my good buddy that was with me kind of pointed his finger at me, and I made the mistake of saying, "Well, if you can't find anybody else, I'll do it," which turned out to be famous last words. And here it is 3 years later, and after this convention's over with, I'll be the district commander.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you belong to any other veteran organizations?
We got a pocket full of cards of just about all of them. I'm a life member of the VFW and DAV. Still belong to the Non-Commissioned Officers Association, retired enlisted, and the Association of United States Armed Service, or NAUS, National Association of Uniformed Services. So I'm most active right now in the American Legion, but I belong to a number of the different organizations as well.
Congratulations. I'm glad to hear that. If someone would ask you if they should join the service, if a young man or a young woman would come to you and say, "I'm thinking about joining the service," what would your comment be to them?
Well, I had that happen to me just a few years ago, even during the time of post 9/11, when we was most heavily involved in the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan both. And he asked me if I've recommended. I said, by all means. The experience and the friendships and the camaraderie making the service are definitely worth it. And even in spite of whatever hardships there may be with the combat, I would definitely recommend it.
Okay. One other question I have for you is, during the time that you enlisted in the 70s, the late 70s or mid 70s, the buddy system was very active.
Right.
And I don't know if it still is. But did you go in on the buddy system?
I almost did. I had a friend of mine in high school. He was wanting to go in the military police corps with me, but at that time they had a minimum height requirement of 5'9". He was half an inch too short, so he missed out on or didn't get a chance to go in.
Okay. Mr. Vance, is there anything else you would like to add to your story and history?
Nothing.
Okay. I would like to say I appreciate the honor that you gave me to interview you. I thank you very, very much for allowing me to take this time to interview you. I also would like to thank you for giving your time to our country and your service. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well,